What's up, guys? It's another Sunday night here, and I have an awesome guest tonight. We are going to be talking to Senator Eric Brakey. He's a state senator from Maine. He was recently hired as the executive director for the Free State Project, which, as you guys know, I'm a free stater. I'm in the state of New Hampshire. And I'm really excited to talk to him about that and his goal and vision for the Free State Project and bringing new movers here and making New Hampshire more free. Really excited to talk about that. And I don't know, we'll kind of touch on a little bit of everything. He's got a very unique story. Even just how he, got into the Senate and stuff like that. So I'll bring him up and let him introduce himself. Eric, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Ben. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for all you do in the Free State movement. Since I've come on board last December, and I'm still getting to know so many people, I really see the people who are out kind of building community and, not just sitting around passively waiting for stuff to happen. I've been impressed with, the events that you've put on both in the Free State and also, boy, I was at the LP National Convention and you were throwing an event there. So thanks for all you do to to build culture and community in New Hampshire.
Absolutely. And it's event production has always kind of been part of my thing, but I definitely love being here and being part of a community that's like already has so much stuff going on. And but like even amongst such a diverse political community, there's like people have just like these niches. Mine is like a lot of my stuff's more music based and music focused. And to me, I think art is a great way to, kind of sway the culture in ways. And I think a lot of my political opinions originally came from a lot of the music I listened to. And, that's the case for a lot of people. So if we can music, and New Hampshire doesn't have the greatest like music scene in the world. Let's be honest. Like there's not a whole lot of music venues, not a lot of big bands that are touring through New Hampshire other than like maybe like the, the arena or something like that, or out in Hampton Beach. But, glad to be here. Glad you're here. Glad you're coming here. You just got elected like just a couple months ago, right? It was, last year, beginning of the year.
Yeah. Well, I came on into the role of executive director, hired by the board of directors of the Free State Project last December. So it's been 9 months, but is it 9 months? Yeah, I guess 9 months. But it's been a gradual transition. I'm still currently a Maine state senator. My term continues through the end of the year. And so I'm letting that ride out as I kind of transition over. I've already purchased a place in Dover, New Hampshire, where I'm moving to, but I'm kind of back and forth between here and Maine a little bit as I finish up the final duties of my job in the Maine Senate. And I focus more and more every day on responsibilities running the Free State Project. And again, it's been awesome getting to know the community. I've been welcomed with open arms. There's something I've learned is just how many different tribes of the Free State there are. And sometimes there's a lot of infighting, but you know what? I've really found that like every community within the Free State movement that I've connected with, I find people of good faith who oftentimes have great ideas, and I've been really appreciating the opportunity to listen and build on kind of the ideas that people bring forward.
Yeah, so like how long have you been in Maine? Have you lived there your whole life, or?
I would say I had been a full-time resident of Maine since 2011.
Okay.
But my family goes back in Maine on my mom's side for generations. My parents met there in the second grade in New Gloucester, Maine, high school sweethearts, graduated from college there. But they moved out to Ohio looking for work after college, and we spent our summers in Maine. And I came back up that way for the Ron Paul campaign full-time in 2011.
I remember, a couple of years ago, I think it probably was like hearing you on, I think it was Tom Woods, maybe. Was it Tom Woods?
Could be. I've enjoyed doing the Tom Woods show.
Woods, I think,
over the years.
Dave Smith has probably featured you before as well.
Yeah, I've been on there once.
Yeah. But it's cool because you have a very interesting story about how you even like got into state Senate, right? Like I was just talking to you, like I spent the weekend up in Portland, Maine, and I was just out kind of at a bar and a bunch of mutual friends were there. And I met one of the attorneys that were working on your the Max Lynn case. That was he was obviously running against you. Was he primarying against you? It was like a primary situation, or
Yeah, this is when I was running for the United States Senate 6 years ago,
yeah,
and, he was my Republican primary opponent. Interesting character. He had moved up to Maine from Florida, where he'd been like an independent candidate for governor. He kind of, you know, he was a little all over the place in terms of his politics. He'd, at one point been a supporter of Barack Obama, then became a big supporter of Donald Trump. He came up to Maine. He ran for the U.S. Senate. He challenged me in the primary, and yeah, it is a kind of an amazing, interesting chapter. Now, I don't think this was necessarily totally his fault, except for the fact that like it's the people he hired to do the job. But like
yeah,
when he submitted his 2,000 signatures he needed to qualify for the ballot, our team went through it and found out that there were a lot of people, a lot of signatures of people who were deceased,
yeah, and
and
from other
also
countries too, right? Yeah,
I don't remember other countries. I think what it appeared is that there were certain people, and in some respects, I think he got swindled by just hiring people who
yeah.
were cheating
Didn't do
him
their
out of money. He was paying
diligence. Yeah,
he,
cheating.
he was paying per signature, and he hired some people who apparently went through the voter file and just started forging signatures for people who were kind of listed in the voter file. And it turns out some of those people were deceased. We found their obituaries. And some of those people were alive, but said they never signed that. So there was a fight in terms of ballot access over that. He did get disqualified from the ballot that year. What was interesting for me, and I will say Max Lynn and I patched things up, and we had a fine relationship after, though it was pretty tense during all that.
Hmm.
He did pass away a few years back.
Oh wow, okay.
Um, uh, and there's some weird circumstances, but I don't know all the details there. But it was weird. It was my first kind of race where I was running for something where I was characterized by an opponent as the establishment candidate, because I'd served 2 terms in the Maine State Senate, even though I'd been like, kind of the lone dissenting no vote on so many things, and I come out of the Ron Paul campaign and the Liberty movement. I, I guess by that point in time, because I wasn't like the most enthusiastic supporter of Donald Trump, they were trying to characterize me as an establishment individual, but
Yeah,
it was not an angle of attack I was used to getting attacked by, because I'd always
sure.
been
Yeah, yeah.
such an anti-establishment person.
Yeah, I mean, like you are like, there's like a Liberty caucus up there. There's Liberty Republicans in Maine. And I know that you're not the only one. I mean, there's definitely other people up there that are they're not Eric Brakey, but there's a few up there that are helping you out, right? And fighting the good fight.
Yeah, there's actually a really good contingent of Liberty legislators in the House, and there's some fairly decent people in the Senate, other than me, but not. But I do worry when I leave the main Senate. There's not going to be like a real Ron Paul libertarian there,
Yeah.
like there are a few in the House. I was kind of the lone vote on a lot of, I think, important things like defend the guard in the Senate, so that's going to be a hit. But
How many terms
I'm
did you
hopeful.
do as state senate?
What's that?
How many terms did you have for state senate?
3 terms, but
3
I
terms?
took a 4-year break. So
Okay.
I was elected for the first time in 2014. I was 26 when I was elected, and I was the youngest state senator in the country at that point in time. So that was 2 years after the Ron Paul campaign, and I was kind of coming off of the network we'd built, all the grassroots energy that we had, and with a lot of people's support, we broke a lot of state fundraising records, and I took out a Democrat incumbent in a district that was kind of a pivotal swing district for the state, and we beat him by 18 points. It was kind of a big surprise landslide, and but served 2 terms, got a lot of accomplishments. I'm always happy to brag about if people have questions about it. But I left to run for the U.S. Senate, and then I ran for Congress 2 years later. That was 2018, 2020. I lost my congressional primary during COVID. COVID screwed everything up.
Mm.
So then I went to Young Americans for Liberty down in Austin, Texas for a while. I I tried to help build the programs to get more liberty legislators elected around the country, because I do think that that is the biggest advance, politically speaking, for the liberty movement over the last decade. But because it's not happening in Washington, D.C., it's not something that really gets major headlines, because we are all just supposed to focus on the circus in DC and ignore the fact that liberty Republicans are taking over, not just in the New Hampshire legislature, but to a lesser degree in state legislatures around the country. So after 4 years off, I came back. I took my state Senate seat back from the Democrats who'd held it since I left. And but I could really tell you that Maine is not in a very good place right now politically. Democrats run everything now and have been driving the state into the ground. And I came to the conclusion that the best way to help Maine was to actually take a step back, try to join with kind of the movement here in New Hampshire. I think what the Free State movement is building here has been amazing, and maybe in the long term, having a strong, robust liberty model right next to Maine will help the people realize that there's something better that they could have. And maybe even, I think sometimes as things go more and more in the wrong direction in Maine, maybe some of these counties in Maine, the rural counties adjacent to New Hampshire, will take a play out of the handbook of the Greater Idaho movement, where Western Oregon is trying to break away and join
the
Idaho.
Jefferson.
And of course, the state of Jefferson in Northern California too. So it'd be a great way to reinforce the liberty movement in New Hampshire. And
it's funny that you mentioned Jefferson too, because or you kind of bring that part up, because I lived out in Sacramento for work for about 3 years before moving here. 3 years, way too long. And when I was there, I saw what you guys were doing, or what we were doing out in New Hampshire with the Free State Project. And I was like, man, like, I wonder if like a free town project would work, or like we got the free Jefferson, or like, I basically called it like the free Jefferson thing. So I kind of did some research on like what it would take to actually make that work. Like, obviously, splitting up California could only happen if it was Democrat led, which, I mean, it's possible, could happen, if they get frustrated enough with the North. The problem is the north of California, they provide all the agriculture for the rest of the state. A lot of the water comes from Northern California. I think it's, can't remember, it's like Eureka or starts with the E. It's one of the biggest, only ports in Northern California too. And the trade industry goes in and out of there. So, I was like, oh, this is a cool idea. But the more I like researched the Free State Project as a model, I was like, I've always wanted to go to New Hampshire anyway, and I needed to get out of California. I couldn't stand it there anymore. I didn't want to be there. I was just like, I had to get here ASAP. You know what I mean? So, I think I flew out here for a trip, had an interview. That was on a Monday. Tuesday, I had an interview and got offered a job. Wednesday, I sat down with a realtor. Thursday, I had a house offer accepted. And Friday, my home inspection was done. So all within 1 week, my whole life just flipped. And I was like, oh, sweet. So 1 month later, I got here.
What year was that for you?
That was 2.5 years ago. That was March of 2022. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize how fresh off the boat you were.
Yeah, I'm really am still fresh. I did run for county sheriff my first year here. That was fun. They didn't really like that, but I had a good time with it though. This is a good time.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome.
But it's cool because you do have you've got a lot of political experience working, in the actual legislative process. You've helped Yao do, stuff as well. And I don't know, when did you know about the Free State Project before you moved to Maine originally, or is it something you kind of discovered along the way?
No, I mean, I didn't really know about the Free State Project until, I guess it was at some point during the Ron Paul campaign in 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
Heard about all the stuff that was happening in New Hampshire. I'm sure I don't know if it was the first time I heard about the Free State Project, but I do remember back in those days, I used to like Google Ron Paul every single day. Like, what are the new news headlines, that are, and I remember like as New Hampshire approached, reading about like Ron Paul's got a secret weapon in New Hampshire. It's the Free State movement. And it's why he's expected to like do so well in New Hampshire. And I was like, oh, wow. Actually, that's kind of pretty brilliant. Like, go mass concentrate libertarians in the first of the nation primary state. That's going to really help give a libertarian candidate in the Republican primary a boost. And it did. Ron Paul took second in New Hampshire after Mitt Romney, and yeah, I mean, obviously, we love first place finishes, but he did disproportionately well in New Hampshire compared to other states. So at least I was familiar with the FSP because of that. And then within the next year, I came to my first Porcupine Freedom Festival. I remember going in 2012. I remember like buying with silver a copy of Murray Rothbard's For a New Liberty, a Libertarian Manifesto, and reading
Nice.
that and consuming that front to back. And doing an interview with some of the folks with Free Talk Live that year, because of course this was right after we had taken over the Maine Republican Party at the state Republican convention, and we were going to the national convention where we were expected to have a big showdown with the Mitt Romney campaign and the RNC, which we were in the midst of because they were challenging our delegation and trying to get us unseated, which they did. They did do. They kicked out half of us elected Ron Paul delegates that year. I was kicked out along with many others.
Wow.
Because they wanted to ensure that Ron Paul didn't have pluralities, or maybe it was majorities, in 5 states, which under the RNC rules would have been enough for Ron Paul to have his name entered into nomination, and he would have been able to give an uncensored speech. And they offered Ron Paul an opportunity to speak at the convention, as I understand it, but he refused it because he didn't want to give a censored speech, right? He didn't want to give a speech that the RNC says and the Mitt Romney campaign says, okay, this is what you are allowed to talk about. And by the way, you have to endorse Mitt Romney, right?
Yeah, right.
Ron wasn't going to do that. So an uncensored speech from Ron Paul on primetime television at the Mitt Romney coronation was not something they were going to allow to happen. So
Yeah,
it was a big fight that year.
Well, and so I don't know. So you've done a lot with like political strategy. Like you're pretty familiar with like the ins and out of how all this stuff works. Now as libertarians, and I've been I'm on the LNC. I'm on the National Libertarian Committee. So there's a lot of different strategies amongst libertarians of like the best way to get liberty in our lifetime, right? And we always talk about like defeating the duopoly. So I love the Free State Project and like how we are kind of working through that. And I like, I think that you probably agree. That's probably why part of the reason why you took the job too, because it's like, people say, you defeated duopoly by like basically adding another third party into the ranks, right? Where you're an equal competitor in a 3-party race, and it's about chasing votes and all this stuff. And to me, and the reason I'm with the Libertarian Party, on the actual party itself, is because like I think that like we need to maintain principle, and I've never thought it was about chasing votes. Like I've always think it's just about having a consistent vehicle for delivering a good liberty message that the other parties can't deliver. We're running strictly on libertarian principle. Now, unfortunately, we get put into situations where it's very, just like every party, there's a lot of divides, there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of caucus wars. And I don't know, I'm sick of all of it. I kind of stepped away from all that stuff. But I'm not in any caucuses, but the emo caucus, my caucus. So, it's that's a strategy. That's one way to do it. And I think that there's a place for all of them at the table. Like, I think that like everyone has a role to play in facilitating liberty in our lifetime. But when we talk about defeating duopoly, the Free State Project definitely took a different approach to that. And that would be basically defeat the duopoly by taking over the duopoly, right? And we have like a lot of libertarians that are currently elected in New Hampshire. I just had Tom Mannion on within the last 2 weeks here.
He's great.
That was a he's such a good guy. He consistently at the top for, NHLA and the Liberty Alliance scores and ratings and stuff. And great dude. That was a great interview. But I don't know, like you see this, you've helped kind of take over the Republican or the GOP in Maine with the Liberty Caucus, right? And like this is a strategy that is showing results. It's getting us closer to liberty in our lifetime. There's a lot of people who might disagree with that. Oh, it's like you say you're libertarians, but you're not running as a libertarian. But to me, it's all the same. You got to stay principled, right? I don't know. What are your thoughts on all this? Like this is definitely this is a great strategy we have here in New Hampshire. So
Yeah, I mean, I think just like Bobby Kennedy is learning and has learned, is that the system is rigged against anyone outside of the two major parties, and it's part of that is corruption of the system in terms of the ways that certainly in presidential races they've raised the bar on getting into the debates. It's like anytime you get close to it, they change they change
yeah,
the rules. So part of it is corruption of the system, but also part of it is just the design of the system itself, which is so long as you have a system that is based on kind of a first past the post plurality win system, it's always going to create an incentive in the minds of many voters to, rather than voting for the person they agree with most, to vote against the person that they fear the most, and therefore vote for the person most likely in their minds to beat the person they're most afraid of. And so everything kind of boils down more and more as you get closer to election day towards two choices. And that's the way just general elections tend to kind of gravitate towards these two poles. So under the system as it is, really, if you want to have an influence on, I think, advancing the liberty movement politically in terms of getting liberty candidates elected, you really have to play in the primaries. And the Republican primaries are much more fertile ground, certainly, than I think the Democratic primaries are. The Democratic Party, I think, has lost any remnant of liberty principles that
there's definitely
perhaps
no
they had in the
moderate
90s.
Democrats.
What's
Like
that?
the moderate Democrat, the idea of having like a moderate Democrat, like of what a Democrat used to be, it really doesn't exist anymore. It just like a lot of them either have migrated to the Republican Party because they've flipped and switched, or they're just independents now. So
Yeah, well, and I don't even know what this like word moderate means. I mean, I feel like for the
yeah,
longest time in the corporate press, like moderate meant like Republicans want to spend more money overseas and Democrats want to spend more money at home, and the moderates are the people who say let's spend more money on everything, right? That's what the corporate press told us. Like moderate in kind of, at least as I've grown up the last, in the last 20 years I've been politically aware. Moderate seems to just mean like the corporatist candidate. And I
yes,
think
yeah,
this is
you're right.
why ideologies that are more radical, or some might even say more extreme, have become more and more mainstream as time goes on, whether it's the socialists on the far left or the libertarians. I don't know, people call us far right where we are, but we're certainly a more radical ideology. And I think these have become more mainstream because the centrist ideology, or what the corporate media tells us is the centrist ideology, over time is being revealed as so batshit insane, right?
Yeah,
That we're going to bail out the banks ad infinitum. We're going to print trillions of dollars out of thin air. We're going to fight multiple wars all around the world and try to maintain this global world empire and like invite World War III onto us because we refuse to recognize that the unipolar moment is over, right?
yeah.
Um, if that's moderate, then I don't know. People saying like, "Hey, we should live within our means, follow the Constitution." It's like that sounds a lot more moderate to me, a lot more
Yeah.
reasonable.
Well,
Um,
and like talk about like litmus tests. We talk about these a lot, in our own political parties or whatever. In one sense, we definitely need a way to weed out people who are like bad actors and just aren't principled and don't have what it takes, right? But the litmus test for a libertarian, I mean, obviously it's a big tent philosophy, right? Like don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. It's something that most people probably agree with, and how you interpret that and enforce it are completely different things as well. And that's, kind of where we get all the different factions in the LP, and also even in like the Republican Party. A lot of those people, like even Donald Trump said, I'm kind of a libertarian myself. It's kind of silly, but then we have actual libertarians like you, like Tom Manning, like almost 100 probably people in the New Hampshire State House right now, that openly identify as libertarian, liberty minded people. And no matter what the definition is that you use, it's all, we all have the same thing in mind, which is liberty in our lifetime. And I don't know, talk about litmus test though. There's like definitely a litmus test that we give to people, but what kind of people are we looking for in New Hampshire? What are the type of people that we want moving here? I guess that's where we would start. What's the litmus test for a potential free stater?
Well, I mean, I think as far as like the Free State movement is concerned, the Free State Project, it is very big tent. I think whether you are a classical liberal or a more right-wing paleoconservative libertarian, or a Randian objectivist, or kind of wherever you fall, if we all kind of agree on these basic principles of the non-aggression principle, don't hurt people, don't take their stuff, and if we have disagreements on the application of those principles in certain areas, but we're all still kind of in good faith working from first principles, I count that person kind of inside the same tent as me. I will say my personal litmus test, and this isn't necessarily a litmus test for the Free State Project, but my personal litmus test that it's hard for me to get beyond if someone is really bad on this particular issue is war. And maybe just for me, when I was younger, I was a neoconservative. I believed in all of the wars of the George W. Bush era until I realized how wrong I was. And
why do you think that, like that definitely is something that's just socialized into us kind of, but I know a lot of people have are like that. I can look back into my teenage years and I've pretty much consistently been like anti-war, but I know like even my parents, especially my parents, actually, speaking of them, they've been, Republicans their whole life. How do you think like it gets to the point where like people are like, oh yeah, like we need to, obviously they feast off of their emotions a lot. The news especially is just the corporate media is the enemy of the people for sure. But like, I don't think it's natural for people to want war. I think that division and fights happen and things escalate. But when it comes to like bombing people, which we have done just over the last 20 years, like we can talk about the last 60 and 70 years, sure. But since 9/11, it's been insane. Like over the 4 years that Trump was in office, he dropped more bombs than Joe Biden has over the last 4 years. I don't know. But yet it's always, there's always a faction that's dropping bombs that's also saying, oh, but we're anti-war, right? How does this get like bred into people's heads other than corporate media, which is the only thing I can really think of as an answer?
Right. Well, the corporate media is a big part of it. And I think there's a good reason why, as the corporate media is kind of losing its grip on the narrative, that more and more people are questioning these things. But I mean, to be fair to those who still buy into all of this, I mean, I suppose to be fair to myself as a younger person when I believed all of this. I mean, I suppose when I see someone who still believes the lies around war, I have to remind myself that I once was that person, and we're all on our own individual journeys to figuring out the truth. And some people just aren't there yet.
We lose that. We really do lose our ability. Like once you take that red pill and become like a libertarian, or your mind flips into the other way, we almost lose our ability to be able to talk to normal people.
Yeah.
It's sad, but I think that we, as liberty-minded libertarian individuals, we need to do better, like in the apologetics area, which is like, just kind of like basically being witnesses for liberty, essentially. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think certainly, like, the great thing about the Ron Paul Revolution, right, was that, like, that, right, and that Logan of this that logo of revolution, it had the backwards love, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's a revolution based on love, and um, yeah, I think we could all benefit from a dose of humility and grace for other people, recognizing that very few people are born libertarians. Very few people like have the good fortune to kind of be born into a family with two parents who are libertarians who teach them
Yeah.
the right
That's
principles.
that's like so rare. That's like not
Yeah,
even, it doesn't even, because like even like
it's
if you're
rare
born
everywhere
with,
else except for New Hampshire.
except for New Hampshire, sure. But like, I mean,
Yeah,
even like, even so, just because like your parents raise you to be something doesn't mean that's what you're going to be. You know what I mean?
certainly.
Like a lot of people like are rebellious and then they flip the other direction. I don't know. It's complicated, but the only thing we can do is like really like breed like or cultivate a community that embraces freedom, um all freedom, which is what we're trying to do with the Free State Project. And that we love each other. We might disagree, but we're a community. We have each other's backs. At the end of the day, I have no doubt, if shit hit the fan, the Free State Project, like, we have a community that would self-sustain. We would be able to make it through whatever problems we come by, because we have people who homeschool, we have people who have farms, we have people who teach people how to, shoot guns, and our community's big, and we have enough that we could, I think, make it through just about anything. Um, but the whole like idea that you know I don't know, like, the war is definitely a tough spot for me. Like, I was in the military back in 2011 2012, and I've been anti-war my whole life. Even when I was in the military, I joined because I wanted to leave my parents' house, and it was very not based of me. But um we like my ability to talk to people who were my fellow veterans, even after I started, kind of like trying to talk to them more about libertarianism, I realized like there's a huge void there. And how do we do that? It's by really, I think, reinforcing the ideas of the Constitution. We just talked about defend the guard. We talked about it. I talked about it a bit on my show a couple weeks ago with Tom Mannion as well. But you've been a huge advocate for defend the guard, especially in Maine. There was a hearing on it this last year, correct?
Yeah, I sponsored it. We got roll call votes for it in the House and the Senate, which is the first time it received a roll call vote in Maine since 2011. Maine was actually the very first state that it was ever submitted as a bill. But it had kind of laid dormant as an issue for a while until this kind of big national movement for Defend the Guard has come up. With huge credit going to Dan McKnight and folks that bring our troops home. But yeah, it is.
Diego's coming on my show on 9/11, by the way.
Oh
That'll be
yeah,
cool. Yeah.
Diego's great. Diego door knocked on my U.S. Senate campaign.
Oh, no way. That's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
He's a great guy and a great activist. But I mean, I think that Defend the Guard is, you know, we are so fixated on Washington D.C. because that is where like the power has all gravitated towards,
Yeah.
and we are often caught, trying to. And I certainly was caught in this too. I ran for federal office twice, for U.S. Senate, for U.S. House, on this idea that the way to defeat this terrible monster that has grown large and has like taken our liberties and shredded our Bill of Rights is that we've got to go into the belly of the beast and try
Drain
to
the swamp, right?
drain the swamp and try to like defeat it on its own ground. But I mean, the truth is, and I've learned this the hard way, is that we are at a tremendous disadvantage if that is our strategy.
Yeah.
Not only the people that we get there are, to go into that swamp, there are many temptations along the way, and you may get there and you may find out that you fall to the dark side yourself. It takes a very, very strong will and commitment to principles to resist all the temptations in that evil imperial city. but also just the battle to get there in the first place is a tremendously uphill battle. I mean, our opponents, as I've certainly experienced, have access to a literal money printing machine, and to drop millions of dollars against you is
Yeah.
nothing because they can print trillions out of thin air. They hand it out to their special interests through sweetheart deals and corporate bailouts and you know, government contracts, and then the money gets laundered back from those groups into their own political campaigns and their PACs and everything. It's one big money
Mhm.
laundering operation.
Yeah.
It all comes from the Fed. It goes to the system through the special interests back to the politicians. And so to drop $1 million against you is nothing for them, but for you to raise that money is from the
Yeah.
grassroots is a
Yeah,
lot.
it is.
And it is and sadly, when you're running at that level, it really is a money game because you can't knock all the doors yourself.
Yeah.
Like when I ran for state senate, I could knock every single door and I could talk to the people face to face, but I can't do that statewide. I need to raise the money. So we're at a huge disadvantage there. But we are not at a disadvantage when it comes to these state legislative races where shoe leather still is very effective and counts a lot more than money.
I think
And so
that's
that's
why
where,
another reason New Hampshire is just so special. I talked about this with Tom too. Is like we have the best representation per tax citizen in the entire country, with over 400 state reps, right? And that means one rep represents 3,500 people. That means you can go and knock every single one of those doors over the course of a few months and talk
yeah,
to every single person that's voting for you, which is huge. It's such
yeah.
a huge thing. And
But
defend the guard obviously brings things back to the state as well, like, which is, I think, like what more states should be focusing on, like in terms of legislative action. Um, you know,
Absolutely. You know, for the longest time, people could say, like, okay, great, you run for state representative, you get there, but what are you guys going to do about the wars? That's something that's decided in Washington, D.C. Of course, the problem is it's not even being decided by our elected officials in
no.
Washington, D.C. anymore. So, defend the guard is really a statement that actually we can stop the wars from the state capitals, or we can at least make Congress do their jobs and go on record and sign their names to it so we can hold them accountable in election
And when
season.
you explain this to people, people are like, "Oh yeah, we should be upholding the Constitution. We should, unless Congress declares an official act of war, we should, not be sending our troops over there to die." It just makes sense. And this is to people who are both pro-war and anti-war on both sides of the fence. I've seen plenty of Republicans that were like okay with us being overseas for some reasons, but we're also very against breaking the Constitution. And a lot of them don't even realize that the Constitution is being completely violated right now. They don't understand the Constitution despite being constitutional advocates, right? And When it comes down to it, that's one thing when I was running for as a constitutional sheriff a few years ago, is like, oh, man, it blows my mind how many people just don't even know what it says in the Constitution. Like they don't even know what they're talking about. Despite being constitutionalists, they have no clue what they're even saying. And with the Defend the Guard bill, I think it's amazing. Bringing that back to the state to decide. If Congress wants to send troops overseas, they have to declare an act of war first. And I think New Hampshire can lead the way on that. And I think that we've already made huge strides to do so. And let's just hope, Emily Phillips gets elected to this state senate. I think that would play a huge role
It
of
would be a
helping to get.
tremendous shot again across the bow to all of the establishment Republicans in the New Hampshire Senate
Yeah.
who punted on Defend the Guard, didn't even have the courage to go on record and vote for
Not even a roll
against it,
call, right? Like it's
right?
like, or whatever. So it's crazy. But I think that's like what's cool about like all of our Liberty reps here in New Hampshire, with that a lot of them are free staters. Like a good portion of them are free staters that came here to make a difference, and they're making the difference. A lot of them focus on nullification, which I think is another huge one. Like they just passed the law just the other year that would essentially, if the state chooses to, they can technically nullify basically federal gun law. If they, federal agencies, they can tell them to kick rocks basically if the state decides to. And I think that should be, I don't know. And while like I don't know if we're in a spot right now that would actually happen, if I also think that it's important because it just brings it that much like closer into like that decentralized level where like people are able to kind of decide what's best for their own communities and not rely on the government for everything. And if Kamala Harris gets elected, like you don't know what's going to happen. Like she could try to pass
Yeah.
some AR bill ban.
I mean,
Just like
she's in the past promised that she would do gun confiscation by executive order
yeah,
without even an act of Congress,
yeah,
right?
and we have an opportunity here where we can just say
Yeah,
kick rocks, you know.
yeah.
So
Well, right, and I think if she were to attempt to do that, I think we'd be on very solid ground to say, um, maybe you have some executive order and the ATF is trying to enforce this. Well, under the anti-commandeering doctrine, there's no obligation for the state of New Hampshire or Maine or any other state across the country to expend any state resources to enforce such an illegal decree. Um, Even if it was passed by Congress, they don't have the constitutional authority under Article 1, Section 8 to do something like that. But by executive order, especially, the constitutionality is so uh, there's no it's so unconstitutional on so many grounds. But not only could you refuse to use state resources, and they need state resources in order to implement this around the country. The ATF alone just does not have the manpower.
yeah,
But I would argue that states can and should go even one step further. That if the federal government were to try to come in and enforce unconstitutional federal laws against the citizens of New Hampshire, for example, then the state of New Hampshire should actively defend their citizens.
yeah,
You should use state resources against the federal government. If an ATF agent comes and tries to arrest someone for owning an AR-15 when there's nothing in New Hampshire state law against that, then they should arrest the ATF agent for attempted kidnapping. That's what they should do.
yeah. No, I agree. And I don't know, like, and obviously the Free State Project, we can't decide anything as an organization. We're not a political entity, right? So
Mhm.
we can't like actively influence that like on a strategic level. But having so many people involved with the FSP that have been experienced and that know what they're talking about, the best thing we can do is keep recruiting more people that want to do exactly what's been happening and keep grinding at it and keep getting more people elected, raise the number of Liberty representatives that we have and Liberty state senators that we have, until we are the force. I mean, we have people regularly in the Dems, the New Hampshire Dems. They're scared shitless, dude. Like they just are. They just they put out that thing with Granite State Progress, like, oh, be careful with the free staters, right? Like,
Yeah.
and let's
Yeah.
raise money to fight the free staters this election.
These Democrats in New Hampshire are so anti-immigrant. I'm very surprised. I've never heard them say anything negative about immigrants until it actually turns out that immigrants can bring their political ideology with them and impact the state. Apparently, is a thing, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
But of course, I would say, I know that some people get kind of afraid. It's like, oh, you're trying to change New Hampshire, right? I'm sure you've heard that. It's like really like it's the progressives who've been trying to change New Hampshire. I mean, the motto of New Hampshire is "Live
We're
free
the
or
live
die,"
free or die. Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like
Yeah.
we're trying to make New Hampshire live up to that credo and restore what always made New Hampshire great was that libertarian ethic. So, if you want to live in a socialist state, like Vermont's right there. If you want to live in a corporatist state, Massachusetts is right there. There's plenty of options for you. And why they feel the need to try to reshape New Hampshire into this progressive state. It's like this progressive evangelism that's just like, can't you just be happy that you can like have places where you can live and have the kind of government that you want?
Yeah.
Um, but it's like th- it, 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 it's like there's this impulse that they will never rest until the entire world is like San Francisco.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, like maybe if we ever get to the point of having covenant communities, maybe we could just give up Nashua. I don't know. I'm just kidding. But I'm just joking. But like what's your strategy to getting more people to get here to do things like that? Because obviously not everyone's capable or has the ability to run for office. It's just not something everyone can do. It's not something everyone should do. People have their strengths and they should focus on those strengths to facilitate freedom, right? But there's certainly a lot of people that come here that don't know anything, that don't even realize their potential to run for office, and that they can do stuff like that. But how do we get these people here?
Yeah. Well, of course, since I came on board, we've been doing like a big kind of media tour with a lot of influential platforms, try to get the word out to the liberty diaspora around the country and the world about what's being built here in New Hampshire. And the fact is, a lot of libertarians, there's millions of libertarians in the country, but many still don't even know about the Free State Project. So we have more messaging to do. But it's so great that because we have 20 years of history under our belts, and almost 10,000 people have moved to New Hampshire over those last 20 years. And we can see the results of that. We can see the impact in the legislature. We can see the impact in the homeschooling networks. We can even see the impact in cryptocurrencies, because New Hampshire really was the cradle of crypto and the cradle of Bitcoin,
Yeah.
that helped it grow to be so big and strong. And I think the beauty is, of course, that, like you were saying, we all have different strengths and different passions. I think one of the most important things that happened in the liberty movement was when Ron Paul retired from Congress and people kept going to him and saying, I want to make a difference. I want to keep going on. Tell me what to do. And Ron Paul, not being a central planner, said, I don't know what you got to do. You got to figure that out. There's a job out there for you, but you have to find it. And so that's where, people found their different paths, whether it was in agriculture or homeschooling or the legislature
We
or
have that here. We have
feeding
like a
currencies.
great yeah, we have so many people here that really do, they stick to their strengths, right? Like people have there's a whole homeschooling community. There's like all kinds of different schooling opportunities here for free staters, but we have like Garnet School, who they'll teach people how to build guns, how to forage. It's like how to be self-sustainable and make soap, stuff like that. It's cool. But like you focus on your strength and you find something that you love and you run with it, because at the end of the day, like there's a role for everybody. It's not just making more liberty babies, which sometimes maybe that is somebody's role, but at the same time, um, we are way behind the curve as in terms of a culture, but New Hampshire is one of the only states in the country that's heading the right direction, in my opinion, in terms of like being able to nullify these crazy laws and taking the bad laws off the books, decentralizing as much as possible.
Yeah.
And
It's
it's all because the Free State Project, they've done a lot. So
Yeah. I like to think there's so many different metaphors that apply to what libertarians are doing, what the Free State movement is doing in New Hampshire. It's our Noah's Ark for libertarians. It's our Helm's Deep against the progressive orcs. It is our Galt's Gulch, like whatever metaphor you want. Like there's so many different metaphors for what we're building here. But ultimately, what we're building is a free society where people get to make their own choices in their own lives, so long as they're not hurting anyone else, and you get to keep the money that you earn. And
mhm.
what we build in that free society is up to us. It's not going to be centrally planned by some guy with a bullhorn telling everyone what to do. That's a statist view of how community and society is built. But what's so beautiful to see is that networking effect. You get so many liberty loving people who are doers, people who, as Dennis Pratt would say, people who build, don't bitch, right? People who are doers and community builders. You get that spontaneous order emerging of all of these different efforts and activities. And of course, not everything is political. Some of those beautiful things are just in New Hampshire are not the laws that are passed and the elections that are won, but are just the community institutions that are built. I'll tell you, I'm so happy, like getting to plug into all these activities that happen at like the Liberty Clubhouses across New Hampshire. I just became a member of my first Liberty Clubhouse, the Shell, in the Free Coast of New Hampshire. And like, I'll tell you, I'm I used to be a huge theater guy. Like before I was in politics, I was a professional actor. I got my BFA in acting, but I found as I got more and more prominent in politics, and particularly being someone of the political right, coming out of a theater scene that was so kind of left leaning, that especially post 2016, post election of Donald Trump, and then post COVID pandemic and everything, it was like toxic to try to go back into those communities and to do arts and creative arts with folks. But now, like in New Hampshire, within the Free State movement, there's so many great people who are into the same things that I'm into, who are into theater, who are into the performing arts.
I knew you were into theater too. I knew it from the second that you like started, like you wrote your name down. You were going to sing Space Oddity at Pork Fest this last year for punk rock karaoke. I knew that you were a theater guy. I could just tell.
I was never much of a musical theater guy. So Space Oddity I'm good at because I can act my way through the song. But
right, exactly.
But I will say I am excited that we're putting together at the Shell next September 16th, I want to say. It's a Sunday right after our new movers party. We're going to be doing, and I'm getting people lined up to play roles. And you may have seen this. We're doing a reading of William Shakespeare's Star Wars, Verily a New Hope, which is just a really fun play someone wrote of rewriting Star Wars Episode 4 as a Shakespearean play.
That's awesome.
Anyway, these are the kinds of things you can do in the Free State because you have the people with the talent and the who want to build stuff and do fun things like this.
Next Saturday at the Shell, I'm doing punk rock karaoke again. Right. So that's going to be a good time too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Does the karaoke that you do have to be punk rock?
I mean, like I'm pretty flexible. I mean, you did Space Oddity at
punk rock karaoke.
I know, but you also have like executive director privilege. So I mean, like you could sing what you want, but I mean, truthfully, punk rock is more of like a mindset than a genre, anyways. So I think that there's like a lot of things that are punk rock about just about any kind of music, which is like the Free State Project. We're trying to influence the culture, right? And it's more than just politics. We have our own community, but we are impacting the culture through that community. And to me, it's always through the best way for me to at least do that is through art and music. And you're doing it politically and through art and music, with all the stuff that you're involved with, which is amazing. So,
well, trying to get back into the arts a little bit. It's been like a 10-year hiatus for me. So.
I mean, it's you still got to act a little bit, as a state senator sometimes, right? Like, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, the acting skills certainly like are helpful in terms of getting up and talking in front of people, and also like listening to people. Actually, that's half of acting is listening. So it helps when you're going door to door and really listening to constituents and what they. But it's not the same. My wife keeps telling me that whenever I would complain over the years, like. I haven't gotten to be on stage and play a role in the longest time. She's like, you get to get up and give speeches all the time. That's not the same. Anyway, but it's nice. It's nice. And I say this for anyone who might be considering a move to New Hampshire or just to come and visit. Whatever your pet niche interest is, whether it's kayaking or knitting or Dungeons and Dragons or theater or punk rock, whatever it is, like the libertarian community is so big in New Hampshire that I guarantee you will find people who share those interests with you, and you can build groups and community groups with people who share your values. And you don't need to sit around and talk about Murray Rothbard all the time, right? You can just
don't. In fact, we don't. We have normal conversations with people, exactly. Believe it or not.
But it's nice to know that like the people there aren't going to like. If COVID comes around again, like they're not going to be the ones like getting on the phone line snitching on you because you wouldn't wear a mask or you didn't get your COVID jab, right? Like many other states many states set up. Thankfully, it never got that bad in New Hampshire, but even if it
Yeah.
had, you would know that like nobody in this community is going to be snitching to the government about you breaking these arbitrary, illegal mandates.
Right. I mean, I feel so blessed to be here, and I know that you're really excited to take over this new role and to take us in the right direction moving forward. So and we're wrapping up on the hour, but if you could kind of just give us like what I guess like a quick overview of what your immediate plans are, and what we can do to grow the Free State Project. I mean, it's obviously not everyone can move tomorrow. Maybe it just comes in the form of sending us a donation. I don't know, or just a phone call for a politician here, something like that. So
Well, donations are always welcome. People can do that at fsp.org. But what I really would like to encourage anyone who doesn't currently live in New Hampshire, but you love liberty and you want to see what it's all about, is just come and visit. We've got multiple events. Our big flagship events are the New Hampshire Liberty Forum and the Porcupine Freedom Festival. This next year, the New Hampshire Liberty Forum is going to be in late April, and this is going to be more academic. We're asking people to present problems and solutions for how you transition to a free society. Like, what are the problems that come up as you attempt to transition to a free society, and how do you overcome them? You can learn more about that at nhlibertyforum.com. And then in June, we're going to have the Porcupine Freedom Festival, our 22nd, which is always one of our it's our biggest event every year. So come out to that, come experience what it's like to have a free society for a week. I know that you're there regularly, so people can come see you and me at PorcFest. And then I will just also say shortly that we have events in the communities going on every single day almost in the Free State. So any time of year you want to come to New Hampshire, if you need lodging, check out the Independence Inn. It's centrally located and operated by Free Staters. And you can check out any of the events that are happening at clubhouses across the state or meetups that are going on. Come visit, get plugged in with the community, and really experience what the Free State community is all about. And then, of course, we'd love if you stayed, but everyone's got to find their own path and their own way. And I certainly hope that for whomever is watching, if you love liberty, that eventually your path leads you to New Hampshire.
absolutely. And I mean, people who want to see that, like, they can literally go to the Free State calendar on the website and just see there's like 4 or 5 events usually almost every single day going on in different parts of the state. It's not all necessarily in one central location. And like it's not all, sometimes you just got to plant the seed of liberty, someone else will see it grow down the road. And it's just, New Hampshire's always going to be in everyone's head. I can just tell once you visit New Hampshire, you're not going to get out of your head. You're going to get here. You're going to do whatever you can to make it to New Hampshire. Senator Brakey, it was awesome to have you on the show. Thank you for being here. I'll drop you backstage and we can talk again in just a moment. I'll wrap up the show. Okay.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks. Thanks again for watching tonight, guys. I appreciate it. This next week, man, who do I have on? That's a great question. So I am going with, oh, very nice. This Wednesday, I have Spike Cohen coming on the show. That's going to be a good show. So definitely tune in. Please check out fsp.org. Check out the Free State Project. If you have questions, reach out to me. Reach out to anyone at the Free State Project or LPNH, whoever you want. We can answer all the questions you have about the awesome state of New Hampshire. And we'll go from there. Until Wednesday, you guys have a great week. We'll see you soon.
Coming for the throat! Demons like my knuckles, fucking stabbing bones! Start to powder me, I'm coming for the throat!